that, or did you hear any of that?
I jumped on lately. I didn't catch any of it.
Yeah. So basically, if you want the summary, is Jason wanted, or he's been talking with Daniel, and as you've heard before, that like when it comes to studying phase two, which is the animal phase, like you have to have like this notion of practical magic or spiritual or something. Otherwise, it's just phase one. When we're doing the jitters, like we'll still be doing it in phase one if it's just mental and physical, or yeah, mental and physical. And it's until we start tapping into things like Kodrat that it really becomes phase two. And so I think that's where some of Daniel's leading questions were coming in.
There we go. There we go.
Leading to the fact that that's to that side of phase.
Yeah, Mark's there, Tom's there, and Nikki's there.
I'm going to try to mute before calling people for a bit so that I can hear you, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's better. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So is he alluding to the fact that all the breathing sets will help with that development and help lead into phase two as far as the aspect of practical magic, or just I'm using that term. I don't necessarily know how that's being defined.
Yeah, I still don't quite understand the definition, but I think he's got the side. There's practical magic and there's spiritual, and then there's mental and there's physical.
Yeah.
And so practical magic, my guess is that it taps more into the instinctual, like Kotra. Like it doesn't have to be spiritual, right? It's very applied in a sense of using this energy and putting it towards some purpose. And I think his hope is that like we need to round out the breathing sets for everyone and get everyone back up to a good level, or else we're just still doing phase one as opposed to moving on to phase two.
Okay.
And Jason was relaying that a criticism that you see is there's a lot of good Silat teachers in the U.S. and they can teach you a lot of good self-defense, but it's empty.
Yeah.
And so I think his goal is like how do we move beyond phase one? And I think if we look back at the questions he's been posting on the forum, it ties back into that.
Yeah. So do you think that as I guess as like IOPS students that we have a pretty good foundation relative to say the other CLOT schools in the US?
I think we have. I mean, it depends on what you want to accomplish, right? But I think IOPS is about having a full breadth of an art, and so I think. Like, are you asking, are we good enough on our phase one related to other schools?
Yes, but specifically the phase one for the breathing.
I see.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we do a lot more breathing than others.
Yeah. Yes. So I think I guess what I'm asking is that, and not that I'm being defensive, but is it a criticism of us, meaning like?
No, I don't think it's a criticism. I think it's just that some of us neglect it more than others. Not like, I mean, myself included.
Yeah.
Like, I know you Vermont guys work on it a lot more than I do, but I think he wants the awareness that it's, how do I put it? But that's what's gonna make it phase two. Whereas I think before a lot of us just thought, yeah, it's animals. You do these animal things. Maybe you act a little more instinctual.
Yeah.
But it's really like having that fleshed out and being able to tap into it like on demand.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my guess. My initiative, I think, in terms of like getting us there, is I still think we need kind of a phase one to get people prepared for phase two physically, and that's where I really want these names for the Juderus, just because then you can call out a name, people can practice and drill that motion.
Yeah.
They can kind of mentally get into like, okay, what is it at, and then we can add the other things on. So
yeah.
So that's my own personal pet initiative, is that we get that fleshed out so that we have a common vocabulary for the phase one aspect of the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think what we need to all work together as a group is understand like what material is necessary to get us to the next phase, really on phase two.
Okay.
Like, because we've had varying degrees, and if you've done Kodrat, and if you've done Kodrat correctly, you probably tapped into it. But how do we break it down so that it's not just like you happen to have done Kodrat with Daniel, and that's why you know phase two.
Yeah. Yeah. So is one of the ideas that if we take a look at the breathing from basic phase, and we not necessarily systematically, but if we are able to make sure that we can teach it in somewhat of a systematic way and be a little more specific with it, kind of like how the jurors were standardized. I mean,
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what he wants, is so that we don't just like all kind of come up with our ad hoc methods for teaching phase two, and so that we're like all teaching it from the same level, and then you'll find what works for your different students.
Yeah.
Because I could possibly just like tap into what worked for me, but that may not work for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just my guess. I don't have any students that are anywhere close to the animals. I kind of work them in as like exercises and teach them some motion, but
Yeah.
I don't know how it is for you guys. I mean, you guys have quite a crew out there.
Yeah, it's diverse as far as the levels, and for the most part, everyone is basic phase.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the students that have been there longer have a better sense of sort of the animals,
Mm-hmm.
just because I've been talking a lot about basic phase and sort of giving examples of here's a basic motion, here's an animal motion, and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of making some of those connections with people. Just because I think it will help sort of lay the groundwork for them to really hopefully be motivated to pay close attention to the basics so that they can get to phase two.
Yeah, and part of, I don't know if this is practical magic, but to me, when you're studying the animals, that's maybe where the first introduction to using your imagination, you should be using your imagination all along, and I think that really is what differentiates like a really good Silat player, is they can both imagine all the possibilities and also imagine all the different ways they can use their body. And I think, to me, that it's still mental, but it's like that imagination is what breaks open the gates to get to the other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just kind of going on random things. I didn't have any agenda, and Jason's just going to teach class, but
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to talk to everyone to try to understand, like, where are you at? What do you think you need, or what do you think we as a group need?
Yeah. Jake brought up an interesting point, I think, and made an interesting point. I think it was like a couple of weeks ago when we kind of started talking about the breathing sets, and that we have a tendency not necessarily to overlook them, but we have a tendency not necessarily to explore them as much as we do with the basic phase curriculum. And I agree with that, and the way that I have sort of experienced it and sort of looked at it and sort of concluded is like, so much of the breathing, like you practice on your own and you experience it, you discover things on your own. But I think, my own, what I wish is that, we could spend more time, even with the black belt classes, spend some more time, not necessarily even talking about the breathing sets, but just going through the breathing sets. I think.
Yeah, we kind of take it for granted that it's like, well, if you know the motions, you know what to do.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because it's hard. So the long distance learning for as far as doing this every Friday night, hard to get training partners, right?
Yeah. Same for me.
Yeah.
Unless I get to Fort Collins and.
Yeah, it's never an issue as far as just doing the breathing.
Hmm.
something that we can all do. We don't need to train. We don't even need a lot of space.
We
Um,
should even maybe schedule like early morning
yeah,
breathings here and there outside of this because we don't necessarily need.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like it's not even that, I want to talk about it and, like beat it into the ground. It's just to see it and just to just
Hmm.
get some checks, like just to make sure postures are okay.
Yeah.
Questions are naturally going to come up, I think, through the practice as far as if we could do that. But I think, um, you know, as far as the breathing manual, trying to put this together, there are so many questions that I have and so many
Hmm.
pieces that I don't have, but also so many pieces that I'm like, I think these things happen when I do the breathing sets. I think you can produce certain results with certain, say, like recipes.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of like unknowns. So I'm trying to, work on the breathing project, but I'm at the realization where I'm like, okay, I don't want to put any information down and misinform anyone. I don't
Hmm.
want to pre- present my perspective and have it just be the way that I perceive it, the way that I've experienced
And
it.
I would challenge you to put down your interpretation and
Yeah,
then challenge us back and say, like, am I sane here? And try to hold us accountable. I know it's hard with like this group, and like I know you put something out there and you don't know if it's going into the void or not. But if we can find a way, or you can like say, you know, ask me to ask Daniel to ask everyone else to read it or something.
yeah.
Like,
Sometimes it's hard to articulate, and
yeah.
I think that's one of the 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 challenges is that it is really hard to put into words.
Hmm.
And that sounds so cliche, but it is difficult to, because I think you're putting yourself out there on a very personal level,
Hmm.
and these experiences are, uh, I don't know, it's very hard to, I think, discuss them in a way that is clear and concise, because it's not cut and dry that way.
Yeah. One thing that struck me was it last week or maybe the last time I was in Fort Collins and or somewhere we were talking about how people or no, I think this was back in the discussion on the forum and Daniel was like, what are the effects or benefits of different breathing sets? And and so we have like our notion of those, but like you said, we haven't explored it enough as to can we get those effects out of any breathing set, just like out of Judru Sathu, you can get any millions of applications.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't even know how to go about approaching that.
Yeah,
Like, except for like maybe putting myself in a space where I'm going to say, I'm going to do linear one, and tonight I'm going to focus on using linear one to get me to sleep, to rest, or I'm going to do linear one to energize, or I'm going to do linear one to to stimulate my mental capacity or whatever.
yeah. Well, I think that's an important and an interesting sort of concept, because so the other part that I always think about, and Steve is really, he hammers it in, is like, you need to experience it. You don't want to, sort of corrupt the student's mind. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the things that tends to come up, is that one person's experience could potentially corrupt another
Yeah.
student's experience. And that's not necessarily the intention from anyone, but I think that's one of like the hurdles that we face when we start talking about the breathing sets. And in the past, people have said, "Oh, linear breathing, it can energize you. Linear breathing, you don't necessarily want to do it before bed because it's hard to sleep." I've experienced the opposite, but
Hmm.
I've experienced being energized from it, and have used it to, sort of wake up. But I've also have done it before I've gone to bed, and there have been days where I can fall right to sleep, and then there are some days where I can't fall asleep. So it's like trying to collect data on, like, okay, do it 5 nights a week, see what the results are. But
Yeah.
I think there are so many factors sometimes that it's hard to really isolate like the sort of predicted outcome.
Yeah. It
So
makes me wonder. I'm trying to get Ningsei to dig up the material because I never had a digital copy. And when I was in Indonesia, I did the Diabatin, and I don't know if you've done much of that or experienced any of that. But
uh, some of it.
like with the different mudras, holding the fingers in different ways and such.
Yeah, yeah,
And and I almost wonder if that's like a good starting point for like you're not doing much. You're just sitting. I mean, I guess it's kind of like what Earl's been teaching with Reiki. You're not changing your position, but you're changing some of these fingers, and then it changes your perspective or your intent. And I wonder if that is a way to lead back into the linear breathing somehow.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting when um like talking to Earl about all this stuff and his approach. And he has always been heavily influenced by Daniel's statement about, imagination, intent and imagination are everything.
Hmm.
So you could take any juru's, any breathing set theoretically, you could even make it up. And as long as your intentions were there, you're focused enough to be able to do that, and you're able to use your imagination. And I think surrender, don't give up is a big part of it. But
Hmm.
he is able to produce results that way. And when he does it, it's not necessarily a situation where you're letting everybody always experience it on their own. I mean, there is some corruption there, and sometimes I don't like using that phrase, like corruption of the mind, because it has negative connotation.
Yeah, yeah. But maybe it's and contamination's also a negative, but it's mixing something that wasn't necessarily had anything to do with you before.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but it is very interesting. I tend to fall back on, as far as generalizing the breathing sets in terms of trying to achieve something as far as self-healing or preparing the body to heal others. I tend to fall back on the linear breathing sets,
Hmm.
to fall back on dynamic breathing sets. I tend to fall back on the Eagle series, Sunrise. Um,
Exactly. Those are the same ones I do. It's like I use sunrise for energizing, sunset for decompressing, linear is my like all around, and
yeah,
dynamic and eagle for like getting pumped up.
yeah, yeah. So just over the course of the past couple of weeks that we've been talking about these things more so, I've been playing around with doing the breathing sets, but doing them one after the other, and sort of kind of making mental notes about, okay, after you breathe, just stand and just really like sit with whatever's happening with your body, with whatever's happening with your mind, energetically, whatever is happening. And I have been noticing very distinct results, very
Interesting.
separate from one another. Um, so one of those things is doing. I've been doing linear breathing 2 and linear 3 lately, right? In linear, I get a similar result from linear breathing 1 and 2, but then linear breathing 3 produces a slightly different result,
Hmm.
right? But then when I go into the Eagle series, I get a very, very different result. And typically that is like really feeling like my hands like will start like buzzing, and my body will start buzzing, and I can feel like that sort of electrical charge around my body. So that's been something that consistently has been happening. And when I want to sort of get myself charged up, that's what I'll use. But then last night I did it, and I actually was like, okay, what's going to happen? I know I have to go to bed. What happens if I do the Eagle series? So I did the Eagle series, went to bed, fell asleep, no problem. And I was kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to be up all night. My mind's going to be racing. The energy is going to be flowing. But there were no issues as far as falling right to sleep you know so just like small little experiments like that, as far as trying to figure out um you know different effects for it. But there are definitely like consistencies as far as you know, what happens when I do the sets. You know, like, and I typically practice the breathing at night too. But I don't know. I'm just trying to go through all the breathing sets and kind
That's
of
awesome.
practice them as much as I can, and sort of take notes. But again, like that's one person's experience. So, you know, like I could be fooling myself. You know, you know, it's
But I think there is no fooling yourself if you believe in this. It's kind of a weird thing, but like like going into Indonesia, I'm very much of and still am like the rational scientific mindset,
yeah,
and in Indonesia, like I'd say things like, well, if you don't see it, how can you believe it? Like, or if you don't have proof, how can you believe it? And Indonesians tend to think the other way around. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's another way to think about it, is that
yeah,
they say if you don't believe, it won't happen.
yeah, yes,
And so I think there's merits to both sides, but
yeah,
I think you shouldn't dismiss what you feel, because that's what you felt,
yeah. Hmm.
and no one can tell you that you didn't feel it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nikki, Tom, what are you guys doing back there? Are you watching the lesson or hearing us babble, or
Little of both.
anything you guys care to share or care to that you've been working on, or?
Anything?
Go for it, Tom.
Not at the moment, sir.
All right, no need to call me sir.
It slipped.
Do you want the volume back on Jason's class, and we can just kind of sit in?
It's up to you. I can keep talking. You
Well,
know.
I'd love to hear, like, we don't get to, most of the time we're focused very much on watching what's on the screen. So if you have things to share, I want it to be a venue that we can do this. And then, like, we're recording, so we can point Daniel towards it and say, like, here's what we were thinking about.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
Okay, so not to hog everything, but Tom, if you have something that you want to talk about, please do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I love hearing this though.
Okay.
It's great getting another perspective.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Excellent. Excellent. So one of the questions I have, a few weeks ago, so I've been meeting up with Steve online, and we're sort of doing like a little long distance learning program.
Yeah.
So so we went over dog breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sort of the core breathing sets that we use, you know, like the linear set, the Eagle series, Sunrise, right? Like those are the sort of like the core Sunset, and those are the ones that typically we learn right away. We have a lot of conversations about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then we have these sort of like obscure sets, like the crocodile breathing, dog breathing, rooster breathing, chicken breathing, right? So all of these questions are coming up now, like, okay, so we know that we can use linear breathing for A, B, and C. We know that we can use the Eagle series for A, B, and C. So where do the other breathing sets sort of fall into this? So what I've been doing is thinking about the four, not pillars, but the four sort of classifications for the breathing. So we have our prep phase, we have our processing phase, we have our serving phase, and we have our saving phase. Phase, I'm using the wrong
Yeah,
terminology.
yeah, but I like, just like within linear, we have each of those, right?
Yes, yes. So I've been trying to sort of like create a list of like what falls into each category, right? And it's sort of some of them exists, say like the linear one can be the first phase for the prep phase, right? but then it can also be broken down into, I think like position 9, 10, 11, and 12 can actually be the processing phase and then the serving phase, right? So where does dog breathing fit in with that, right?
I don't know if I can answer that.
Where does crocodile breathing, where does plana breathing fit in with those pieces, right?
That's an interesting question. I'd encourage you to post it and see if you get any uptake.
That means we don't know.
Yes.
Like, I haven't seen crocodile breathing, and I think I saw dog breathing once.
I've seen crocodile breathing once, like 8 years ago or more.
That's when I saw dog breathing.
And I can do dog breathing still, and like that one I did enough to be comfortable with it, but I still didn't fully understand the effects.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I guess part of it is that you can go back to what was it? You can maybe start with like the triangle and the square and trying to understand like some of that, and then I think you can like map it back to the breathing itself. Like, so remember how we're talking about certain cycles like of square or like for mental or for strength, and my guess is those characteristics, I'm just making stuff up here, but those characteristics may map back onto the subphase that you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if this is possible, but can you show me the position that you learned for the dog breathing, and then I'll show you what's...
Let me see if I can get my, like, I have this standing desk here, and so like my wires are, oh crap. Let's see if you still there?
Yes.
All right.
And this is being recorded, right, Lee?
Huh?
This is being recorded?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Let me see if I lower my chair.
So this is standard canonical dog breathing.
I don't know if it's canonical, but, and it's probably going to be like if Daniel looks at it. Can you see me?
Yes.
The office is quite the mess. So my recollection is that if you can see this hand, my left hand, is coming under my leg.
Yeah.
And I'm basically doing like a one-legged squat. And so then I'm going to inhale, arm out, and then compress my knee against my chest.
Yeah.
As I inhale. And then as I exhale, I'm going to pant until it's empty.
Yeah.
And then basically it's like I'm V-stepping. And then I'm going to come twisted this ankle. So I'm not going to be flat on the other foot. But then there, in the ideal case, the hand is going behind the head here.
Yeah.
And feet are both flat on the ground, if that makes sense.
You said the feet are both on the ground?
Yeah, kind of like you're squatting, and so your Achilles are really getting pulled.
Okay. So if you can't touch your hand on the back of the head, is it that you're just really trying to get your chest to your knee?
Yeah, just trying to get that compression is my understanding.
Okay. Okay. Can I show you the variation that Steve shared?
Yeah, please do, because mine is probably rusty.
Okay. Alright. So he came under here.
Okay.
This. Alright. And same thing, so exhale and then empty the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Hold. Inhale, so like reverse breathing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, V-stepping, going to the other side. Exhale, empty the lungs.
Okay.
All right.
So did he show that variation as an easier entry path, or is just the variation he knew?
Could have been a variation that he knew, but he said that he just wanted to double check with Daniel just to make sure that the position was correct.
Yeah, my recollection was that the arms were the other way around,
Okay.
so that it was like you get that hook, and then if you're really like able to compress, like with a knee behind your head, like that.
Yeah.
Like this is standing on something else, but like that's gonna get more compression.
But the whole time your both feet are flat.
They're flat, but they're like forward. Like, let me see if I can unplug part of this to get to where I can get you to see. But like my desk. Let me unplug that. Like, I don't treat my laptop like a laptop, so so it's my office is quite messy. No, that's not gonna work. It's like I'm not on Wi-Fi, so it's not like. So I'm afraid to unplug it. Let's see. This might work. Here. No. Come on. I'm gonna like pull my router out with this. Okay. So, if you can see my feet here,
Yes.
and so my arm is there,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
I'm trying to remember versus, yeah, no. So it's like it's kind of like I'm done a one-legged squat here,
Okay.
and then that arm threads under, and by pulling, I get compression to my chest here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So that's how I remember it,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
And so, I don't know, try them both out. Steve probably knows best too.
Yeah. I think then we run into the the same situation where everyone was taught variations of the sets, right? So then I guess one of my questions relative to the standardization of the jurus is one of the goals that as a group we try not necessarily to standardize, but we try to at least maybe agree on a set that we could have as sort of like a reference point.
Yeah, and I think we've done a good job with linear 1, right?
Yeah.
We have linear 1, then we have like linear 1B, because they were kind of melded together.
I think our Eagle sets look more or less alike now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we have linear 1, 2, and 3 that I think everyone at least knows a universal set. And I think the Eagle series are universal. I think Sunrise is pretty universal right now. So I think we're left with and Sunset, right?
Yeah.
Moon, I think, is still one of them that's up in the air. I'm not 100% sure that we all have an agreed upon set.
But Dynamic 1, I thought everybody, I don't know.
I think the dynamics are pretty standard.
Yeah.
It's just a 6 and 7 are not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ripping ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Maybe I'm just not good at it.
well, none of us
There's
are
no video for them, so I feel safe in saying they're not standardized yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually only know 1 and 2. Those are the only ones that I practice. So, and I've seen the videos, but I don't have enough information about the breathing and coordinating the breath with them.
So if you 2 is very close to 3,
Yeah.
whereas I think 2 is offensive, right? You're holding in your stomach, or exhaling in your stomach, holding in your chest.
Yeah, it's to the stomach instead of the chest.
Yep.
Or
And so then 3 switches.
one is the chest. 3 and I thought 3 and 4 were like chest and stomach, and you move it.
Yeah. Wait, what's 2 again? I thought 2 was. Those are 3 and 4, right?
2 is one arm,
Cross.
like
Oh,
cutting
that's
down, crossing down, and then
right. The
3 and 4. 3 is like the shield in front of your face.
Yep, and that's in the chest
Yeah.
on the hold. And then 4 is the
The Sevendar, the stabbing palms,
Yep.
whatever.
And so then that's where your hold is in your stomach because it's pushing out there.
I thought there was a move in your hold from your stomach to your chest to your stomach on those.
You go back and forth, right? Like with your V-stepping.
Yeah, I thought the V-stepping was more or less the same-ish for the first 4.
Yeah, it's just your hold is at different places.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Let's see what my notes say about this.
so this is the 3, right? Or I mean 4. I forget which one's 3 and which one's 4, but then it's one of these. It's easier to do than to describe.
Yeah. So this is another reason why it would be a good idea to try to get together and do a hangout and actually go through the breathing sets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book. There's a book for the breathing sets.
Heard rumors.
Sorry, I haven't put the herb stuff you sent me in the book. I've been lazy about that. I'll have to...
That's fine. You still have the file though, right?
Yes, I do. Well, you sent it to me. So
Okay. Yeah.
where's my Silat notebook?
That's why you got to digitize it and then share it with everyone.
Oh, what do you mean? Digitize what?
Scan it in. And then
Oh, my notebook is digital. My notebook has been a Word document for the last 7 years. Or it was.
I need to nag Jason about making people work with different partners. Can they hear me?
I didn't just delete my notebook. That's impossible. That's dumb. Where's my notebook? Okay.
So,
It changes its file name every once in a while as I update it, ever so slightly. Right now, the latest versions is Silat class notes parentheses 2 in parentheses. Yeah.
at least you keep it all in one file. Like, I'm likely to have 40.
Well, I have it backed up in 3 places. So I have one that I update that's on my flash drive, and then I move it around and update all the other versions of it.
And it's in, like,
I don't trust Google Drive
No.
to have sole control over my Silat notebook.
I've surrendered that, but my career kind of very much hinges on Google Drive, so.
Yeah. Well, Google Drive. Yeah. Google Drive.
Not to switch the topic here, but I was a little unclear of what Daniel wanted us to do as far as the second, like phase 2.
I think he wants us to kind of discuss what we need to do to standardize.
Okay. Okay. So you watched the class last week, right?
Yeah. And then I don't know if you saw my spreadsheet. That was my interpretation of how to standardize. But
I did, and I liked it, and I was curious of how you cut those video clips actually to isolate each core motion with the.
you mean how to like make it jump to the?
Yeah.
If you scroll down on YouTube, there's like under the share, there's like if you go to any YouTube video and you scroll and you click share, and then there's like a way to like. It'll let you click a box to set the timestamp on it.
Okay.
And then it should update the link. But if you look at the links, you can kind of figure out, like, it'll say, like, 33M 22S or something like that.
Okay.
Like if you look in the links in the spreadsheet. And so that's basically what I did,
That
because
was
that button stopped working after a while.
Yeah. No, that was very helpful actually.
And so, like I've told Nikki, she was thanking me for something else today. It's like, I don't do these things for your benefit. I'm not altruistic. These are selfish motivations.
You shouldn't say that out loud because everyone is like, Lee, thank you.
But I was curious, like, if the names make sense, if the, like, I wanted to get Daniel's feedback on these too, but to me, is if we can standardize on the names, then it'll be kind of like how Tai Chi, you can say single whip, and like there might be 5 variations, right? Single whip might be like that,
Yeah.
it might be like this,
Yeah.
it might be like that, but you kind of get at the core of the motion
Yeah.
whenever someone says single whip.
I was thinking we should name the 9 leg traps or whatever.
Yeah, and maybe
I want it because like our ground fighting, I guess, comes from Madura and gambling, right?
Yeah, the
Oh.
The gambling.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, and I asked Daniel, and he said sure. We named the first one like collecting your winnings.
Yeah.
Where you're in the kneeling position and your one hand reaches down, so that's like reaching for your winnings. So that's what I call it now.
Yeah.
Hey, type them up, and then we'll,
I haven't figured the other ones out, but I taught my class the other night like that, where I had people sit in a circle.
Yeah.
And I just did a series of ground fighting techniques. One person reaches for the center,
Yeah.
and then gets their hand pinned or something like that, and go on from there. So I thought that was an interesting lesson I had from them on the ground fighting.
Do you remember, Brandon? Do you remember at Andy's house when Daniel was there? We talked about the gambling stances, and he talked about how you could tell who trusted who in the circle based on what ground stance they were using.
Yeah, that's the lesson I recall. Yeah, Simpak means you're fighting everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other stance, you're open towards the side of the guy you trust.
So what does Jenkang mean?
I hadn't heard that word before, the last class.
Okay. So there's Jenkang, and then I can never remember if like the other one is Rantai or Rantai. Like I have to person to know.
No, it's that NG that is almost not pronounced.
Yeah. Oh.
It's almost the same as an N, but not quite.
It's like the Vietnamese last names. Well, that's even weirder.
Nguyen? Or no, that's not right.
Yeah. No, it's more like Eng, if you've ever seen the Chinese name. Just NG.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this gambling. I've never heard of this.
Wait, Mark literally just said everything.
Ah.
So you'd have like people, they would sit or crouch in a circle and play a game of some sort. I think it was like dice or something like that.
Yeah.
And your winnings would be, under your legs where you were crouching. And that's where you would keep your money.
Yeah. So the people.
So when you would collect money from the center, you'd have to reach in either with your foot or your hand and just pull your money in under your legs where you would keep it.
Interesting.
And so if somebody were cheating or would reach for their money and it wasn't their turn, then you could like pin their hand or something like that, and then the fight would start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you remember how you could tell who the loner was? Do you remember the loner stance, Brandon?
Was that Simpak?
No, it was like just like a simple horse stance, like crouch down, like.
Just kneeling.
Yeah.
Like monkey type thing, or just like how everybody sits.
Oh,
Like this.
the smoking.
He said this would be the loner stance. They wouldn't be associated or affiliated with anyone.
Because it's unbiased.
So they could grab the money, right, and take off, right?
I don't remember that part. That's cool.
That part. And if somebody tried to grab their money, they can just right away jump up, grab them, and knee them.
Oh, I remember him talking about that in regards to waiting at a bus stop.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't remember the loner part.
Yeah. So then one of the other things is that if a guy is sitting in the center, has someone to the right of them, So if there's a guy here and I trust that person, then I'm going to open myself up to them. I don't need to defend at all. But if I didn't trust this person, I would actually sit this way so that I could protect myself.
Yeah, that's what they're called too.
And so that's why Sempok, you bring the leg all the way around, you don't trust anyone.
Yeah, Simpok means you're against everyone because you're completely closed.
And Sempok gets you out of there if the police come too, right?
Yeah, well, when you stand up, when you're in Simpok and you stand up, you're facing the outside of the circle.
Yeah.
So when you stand up, you can immediately exit
Yeah.
from that position.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know if you guys know this, but I mean, this gives me a whole other perspective. Is in Indonesia, the Madaris are considered like the kasar, which it's the opposite of halus, you know, the unrefined people.
Yeah, I was told they're like cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like cowboys. Like, it's just like maybe like the equivalent of our Texans, or although
Yeah, like that. Yeah, I mean, they don't really eat rice. Apparently.
Of course, like Texans have Texan pride and such, and I guess there's probably Madaris fight their pride, and which is why they're so quick to the knife.
Yeah, or a sickle.
Yeah.
Quicker to a sickle. Yay. I get to spend time with Masamin during the next trip.
So back to the animals. So based on the black belt classes, we have a version of mantis that we've gone over.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We have a version of monkey that we've gone over. We have a version of anteater that we've gone over. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the three that we have. The monkey was covered as far as having each core motion labeled.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You started to label the anteater, but I don't think anyone labeled the mantis, right?
No, we probably need to go back through and find that. Or what I'd love for people to do is like break it up and then either decide here are the motions, like make it into like 7 videos, like or we go back to our mantis video and we clip it out like I did with the other one.
Yeah.
And then we can decide on names.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as far as the other animals, so Daniel said that the version of long crane that seems to be somewhat of a universal version, that the video of Laura and Kyle doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I base most of it on.
Okay. So that one is sort of taken care of. Do you have names for core motion for long crane?
I started to on that spreadsheet, but then like I couldn't decide. For some of them, I hadn't decided if there's a name or a description, and I didn't know how metaphorical I wanted to get with some of these things, because like I don't want to be the only one who dictates these. You know, I'm doing it because like I want a placeholder.
Yeah. But
I don't want like someone else to go, I hate that name. And
I'll come up with some good names for anteater.
yeah, and so like
maybe not my names for the motions because they're silly.
Yeah, so look at the anteater. Let me know if those names, like, if they work or not. That's where I tried to link in a video because I started studying pangolin.
Yeah.
And just trying to like see, okay, what do they actually do, and what do I see from that motion?
Yeah. When you posted that, I got really excited because for a second I thought that the video clips were going to be clips of the real anteaters actually doing those motions.
Oh,
this is going to be crazy. But
well, some of them they are, like the one.
Look at all of them. Okay.
Like the one, or I tried to find things like it was just the first one I didn't link to exactly, but like the climbing the tree, like yeah. I was like, oh, I can see how that's like the skip step.
Yeah, I have a poster of them climbing a tree. They have a prehensile tail, and they actually hang down from branches and things like that.
And then the one where they're like where we're turning in place, you know, that weird rolling.
Yeah.
Like that looked a lot like this one I saw of a video of pangolin rolling in mud.
Yeah, it was so that video was very adorable. You mean the African pangolin?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so cute.
So we also have the short crane.
Yeah.
Right, with names.
So I have a tab on there, placeholder names, but feel free to like say this name sucks.
And Short Crane was covered in the same video as Knife 2, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we would need to address snake. We would need to address dragon.
And what I can
Right.
do with some of those is like with dragon and snake, I started to put a tab and I put names and things, but I don't know if people will understand from my description and the name I've put what they are. Like I was starting with some notes that Steve had, that it was him taking notes of Daniel giving some Indonesian terms.
Yeah.
So if you look at that spreadsheet, and that was why on that forum I was like, what are these terms? I can't figure it out. Like these are like the most misspelled Indonesian words I've ever seen. I didn't know. I'd forgotten I'd gotten those notes from Steve. And so like he thought I was like criticizing his Indonesian. It was just I thought like someone just couldn't spell Indonesian in Indonesia.
Maybe it's Madres. That looks like misspelled Indonesian.
Yeah.
I
And
guess
so I've taken a stab with some of the dragon components. I have an idea for like tiger and snake, but I'd love to just, even if people just started with the descriptions, and if they could even, if they were motivated to put video next to it, like I think ultimately what we would have to do is have, like we were doing with monkey, where we were saying like monkey brushes eyebrow, and you kind of narrate the video, and then everyone can kind of go back and say, oh, that's what that move is.
Yeah.
Like I think that's what's going to make it standard.
Yeah. So are we waiting for Daniel to present us with sort of a standardized version, or are we?
I think it could take 2 years if we wait for that, considering we do something and then we go off on, like Daniel's easily distracted.
Yeah.
And he's prone to addressing whatever's been on his mind as opposed to the larger agenda. And so I would say if we can work as a group and like take a stab, that'll give him the impetus to say, no, you guys are forgetting this, this, and this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say like the effort to standardize is on us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then it's up to us to ask Daniel, like, hey, we really need to fill in the gaps on this.
Okay.
it was kind of tough to figure out Anteater.
Oh, so
A little bit.
Yeah, what did you learn, like, watching the last 2 weeks? Like, because it looked very different from the Anteater. Not very different, but, like, certain things were different, and I'm still trying to...
Well, a lot of it is from ground exercises and practice that I do already, but I didn't associate them with Anteater.
Mm.
So I didn't see much that was new.
Yeah, I didn't see...
But it wasn't things that there were stuff I'm like, oh, this is just basic, because I'm an Anteater.
Well, I should fill you in on the conversation that Jason and I had, and then everyone else came in the beginning, was when it comes to animals, like, many of us are still at the phase of, we're doing phase 1, but with animal jurus. And I think part of what we need to do to standardize is that, but then the other part that we talked at length about earlier was kind of the spiritual, energetic side of things, and that's where breathing comes in, and that's really what makes the difference between phase 2 versus doing animals with phase 1.
I think Kodrat really helped me with the animals.
Yeah, same here. It was like I came back from Indonesia, and it was like, well, I never really understood the animals, but now I know how to kind of fake it. I don't want to say fake it, but, you know.
Yeah, you get more of the spirit of the animal, I think.
Yeah. But I think,
or figuratively, perhaps.
it sounds like talking to Jason that Daniel's keen on fleshing out our breathing so that we don't just, so that we do Kodrat correctly, or so that we get to that point correctly, as opposed to everyone has their own hacks to get to it.
Well, I can do it as quick as I want.
But
I used it when I was losing while I was sparring a friend of mine. It can happen pretty quick.
But what I guess I'm getting at is where he wants to standardize it so that we all know what tools can get our students there.
I experimented with that a bit at my my gathering. I did a circle, and I did Kodrat with a bunch of people who had never seen anything like that before. That was interesting, and it worked.
Did anyone like leave?
Nope, I didn't actually. There were some deer in the headlights looks, but but nobody ran for the hills.
You should have seen how many times like I was told I wasn't doing Kodrat right in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm not doing it right either.
No, it's just like I just kept getting told like, no, you have to release, you have to let go. You're thinking too much.
Oh, well, that wasn't. Yeah. Well, I think that they did Kodrat right. Are you supposed to remember it? Some people do and some people don't, I think.
I saw both.
Yeah.
I could never get that far removed.
Well, I feel like I've gotten pretty far removed, but maybe I haven't, but it's always been like so I've been in like the passenger seat, so I remember everything.
I ever saw was when we were doing Tarian Jiwa, and then I could just see like people had catharsis and were just like crying and letting it all out and like vomiting and like.
Yeah. Well, when I first did it, I just fell down and didn't move. That was my first experience. My first 3 or 4 experiences with Kodrat.
And I think my first ones, if you think back to what Mark said earlier, how he saw different people were like surrendering or not giving up to varying degrees. Mine were the not giving up. Like they kept saying like, no, it looks too much like how you trained. It looks too much like how your Silat is. Is that what you were getting at, Mark?
Yeah, one of the points, yeah. I think it's always an interesting thing whenever we do Kodrat here because everybody has a million questions about it. And people want to know, what is it for? But also people want to know, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do during it? And there are always questions about, well, did I do it right? Did I not do it right? And it's a difficult thing because you want to encourage people to keep doing it, but then there's always this level of like people are very self-conscious about it, I think. And it's hard to get people to a point where they, especially new students, where they are able to sort of at least begin to surrender. And I think that's like a tricky thing, but I think, I don't know, some people like to do it often. And I'm personally not like a big fan of like doing it like every week, that type of thing. But I don't know. Do you have any experience leading it?
Not so much with my own students. The first time I'd led it was, were you there, Brandon, when we were at that camp?
Was that the camp in the woods that everyone seems to think I went to, but I wasn't?
The one where I dislocated John's knee.
Everybody, yeah. People keep asking me about that years later, but no, I was not there.
Okay.
Jason is convinced I was.
I was convinced too. I don't know.
But I wasn't.
You did a good job of astral projection.
Apparently.
That was the one time I've led it because like at that point no one had ever seen it in the US aside from Daniel. And so I was just kind of winging it, trying to replicate what I saw there. Yeah. And Jason really ran with it, but I think he was still like a teenager and still fighting through a lot of issues. So I've always been very conservative with it, saying I only do it when everyone feels like they're around people they trust and are comfortable with, and I prefer to do it in nature because it just kind of serves as lubricant.
Yeah.
I remember when you gave a performance for I think Steve and maybe Mike and myself in the
gym
school.
That's right.
That
Yeah,
was my first experience. That was just before the first camp, I think.
yeah. I think I did it once there and once at the other thing, and I haven't actually led it, so it's been many years since I've led it, and so in going to Indonesia, they did it with everyone, and I don't know if it was like that they're at a mindset. It seemed like for a lot of people it was very cathartic, and I didn't need that catharsis as much, and so it was always harder for me, or maybe I didn't think I needed the catharsis as much, but it seemed like we could have new members come in, and like Masigit would say, all right, you do this, you bounce, and you pick something, and they would just get into it. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, Mark, but I guess to me, if you can cultivate trust and belief, then go with it, and just have like senior students there to care for the new ones.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't like to do it with too small of a group.
Yeah.
Because like you don't want to get overpowered by someone who's gone berserk.
Yeah.
But or have a bucket of water on hand.
Why is that?
Because if they do get out of control, you can, like a dog.
Okay.
Yeah, I was worried about that happening at my group, because I'm like, well, it's just me here. I figured I may as well try it because.
What I do is I teach people and say, like, look, we're just gonna. I don't know if you guys do this, but I have people stand protectively or like projecting.
So what I did is I had a circle of people doing that.
Yeah, and so
and then I tried to induce it, and a friend of mine who's a master hypnotist, his name is Lester.
Oh, Salvador.
Yeah, and he had fun with it. That was good. But then I saw that somebody in the circle was nodding off. And I'm like, well, okay, looks like he's ready. And then so I just had 2 people and myself do it. I didn't want to push my luck because I know it can be a little risky maybe.
And I tried to do some experiments with Johanna with Tarian Jiwa, but I think I was losing a lot of that. And I don't know if you've ever seen Tarian Jiwa, either of you.
Dance?
Yeah, it's the mystic dance. It's basically a nicer version, maybe a more refined version of Kodrat. And like my recollection of it was we were all sitting on bamboo mats doing meditation, and Masigit would talk, and he would say over and over again, Ikut irama jiwa, which means follow the rhythm of your soul or follow the rhythm of your heart, and then like you'd see people just rocking, and then eventually like splaying out and just rolling around, and then curling up and crying or whatnot, and so like that's one I'm still working on. Like I think that's where Master Hypnotist would work well, but like if you ask Masigit, he'll say like it's not trance, it's not hypnosis, it's something else. And
How did Johanna do with it?
I think I was like trying too hard, and so like and I'd been rusty on it, and I think it's a hard thing to do with like 2 people. Like it, you get multiplicative effects because like it's just like when we have a large group breathing, you kind of feel like, wow, that really amped everyone up, and like my experience with it was there was this power in numbers, because even if I like wasn't able to follow my rhythm, everyone else kind of getting into their rhythm would like kind of like line you up. It's like the little pieces of iron pointing on a compass or a magnet, and they kind of just all self-align at some point. And so like I think that's unlike Kodrat, where we have the circle and it's one person. Tarian Jiwa, in my experience, is like everyone's kind of going at the same time.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon they're like rolling on the ground, running into each other, but they're kind of just ping-ponging or bouncing off of each other.
I think I've done something close to that.
Probably.
I remember because I did a forward flip. which is weird because I can't. The thing about that, the state like that is that your body can do things that you can't do, and it's just your conscious mind that's in control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really my approach to it. I have kind of a lame approach to the internal, and I use it for external purposes. Like my focus with Kodrat is being able to enter it quickly to give me an edge, just maybe not the right way.
Well, I think that is the term practical magic that Jason and Daniel have been using lately. Is that like that's what makes it phase 2 as opposed to phases 3 and 4? Is Kodrat is fine for that. Getting into it, it's practical. You're using it to get an edge, and then it's like as we go into phases 3 and 4, that's where the spiritual comes in and fills you up more. Is my interpretation. So I think you're fine with that, or with that tact.
So if somebody never went through Kodrat, say multiple times, right? Because the first few times people tend not to surrender. There are all sorts of things holding them back. So it's safe to say that they probably would never get to, say, like phase 2 and never really have a deeper understanding of this animal phase.
I don't think you have to do it through Kodrat, and I think this is probably why Daniel wants to touch back on the breathing, because like Mike had never done Kodrat until I'd come back from Indonesia or sometime after, right? But Mike could do the animals and he could get into the animals.
Yep.
He may have been doing something like Kodrat, it just wasn't presented to him to that way.
Yeah.
And so I think there are probably things you can do to first train the body, then the mind, and then train the instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Independent of Kodrat. Kodrat's kind of like going the other way. Like I'm going to start with Kodrat, and then I'll add in the physical later.
So Andy had us do like variations of Kodrat, and one of the variations that we did was we were in a field. It was like midnight, and we had one person stand in the middle of the circle, okay, and then he pulled people out of the circle. And then he had the person in the middle, somebody would turn them around and sort of get them disoriented. And then they would have to, with their eyes closed, turn and find the person, right? So that was one of the versions that he presented to us. Another version that he said was an example of Kodrat would be where one person would be in the middle, they would have their eyes closed, and then another person would go up to them, and he would tell us, he would whisper to the person and say, project love, and the person would go up and project it, and the person with their eyes closed would have to try to process it and sense it and feel it and identify what it was that was being presented to him or her. And then we did that with like a project like anger, right? And we went through like a series of like different emotions, different thoughts, different sort of ideas that you had to.
You're open till midnight.
So, are you guys familiar with that at all?
I've never done that, but it seems like it could cultivate some of the same things. I have no personal experience with it though.
Is that for Kodrat?
Yeah.
And were the people in the circle the ones projecting anger or love?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty common experiment to see what pulls what polarity.
Okay.
Actually, Jason's probably led the most Kodrat out of any of us.
I've definitely done the most.
Well, but you've also, like, the only time I ever taught it was when we were up at that camp shortly after I'd gotten back from Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mark was asking, well, maybe you can repeat, Mark, what you were asking about teaching it, or.
I can't even remember which specific thing we were. We've said a lot of different things tonight. So.
Well, go to the YouTube video and rewind it.
So I got a split, but if you guys want, if this is going to be a topic type of thing, let me know if you have any questions that I can help answer. Shoot them to me on Facebook, and I'll do a little write-up along with the thing I'm doing for Daniel. I can do a write-up about my experience with Kodrat and stuff like that if you want, if you think that would be helpful for everybody.
It's a formula. Maybe keep it clinical. That's my point of view.
Keep it which now?
Like a formula.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't want to ruin anybody's experience.
Like Kodrat 101.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll follow it step by step.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great, Jason.
Awesome. Cool. Well,
Good night.
all right. We'll talk to you guys later.
Good night.
All right. Good night. Wait, can I end this call without ending all of you guys?
Yeah, because I'm the one that dialed.
Perfect. All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Jason.
See you, Nikki. Okay. You have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Okay. See ya.
So yeah, I don't know that I have much to add.
Okay. Did we accomplish what Daniel wanted us to accomplish?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Like, I guess we can point them at the video and say, this is our attempt to accomplish what you wanted us to accomplish.
Okay. So one of the ideas would be to try to explore some of the breathing and actually maybe practice the breathing here. The other thing would be to continue to see if people can post videos of the core motion and then try to have the labels for them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, so that, because I'd like to be able to take any animal and like pick it apart so that we can like rearrange it however you need to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's productive then. Okay.
We'll try to write something up.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. I know I didn't teach anything in specific, but it's great hanging out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Good night, Tom and Nicole.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.